Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. Today is 3rd July 2024, Wednesday, and today we have some important articles for the today's discussion, right? So all these articles are very important from the exam point of view, right? One by one we'll try to discuss all these important articles, and we'll also understand multiple dimensions of these articles which were given in both the Hindu and Indian Express newspapers. And before discussing all those important articles, let's try to solve yesterday given practice question. Yesterday I've given one practice question regarding the membership of India in missile and dual use export control regimes. So the question was, India is not a member of which of the following missile and dual use export control regimes? All four organizations or regimes that you are seeing here are actually missile and dual use export control regimes across the world. And in fact, when we talk about these missile and dual use export control regimes, they actually ensure responsible use of missile and dual use technologies, and at the same time these technologies will not be misused by the non-state actors or states which are irresponsible in nature when it comes to the missile technology and dual use technology. So therefore these countries actually regulate and imposes some restrictions with respect to missile technology and also the dual use missile technology and export control. Now when we look into all these four export control regimes, India is a member of three organizations or three regimes except nuclear suppliers group, right? So India is a member of Australia group, missile technology control regime, and even the Wassenaar arrangement also, but India is not a member of the nuclear supplier group. And one condition to become a member of the nuclear suppliers group is that member country must sign nuclear non-proliferation treaty or NPT, right? So that country must sign nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and only then it will be accepted into the nuclear suppliers group. So since India is not a signatory to the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, India's membership into nuclear suppliers group is very often denied, and in fact countries like China are very often considered as a roadblocks for India's membership into the nuclear suppliers group, because China is very often creating hurdles for India's membership into the NSG grouping. So except NSG, because India is not yet a member of nuclear suppliers group, except NSG, India is a member of Wassenaar arrangement, Australia group, and also the missile technology control regime also, right? So as I have already told you that India is a member of 3 out of 4 missile and export control regimes, excluding the nuclear suppliers group or NSG. When we talk about the nuclear suppliers group, so it deals with the nuclear technology and its control. Australia group, so it specifically deals with the chemical and biological technology and its control. And missile technology control regime, so it deals with the rockets, aerial vehicles related to the WMD delivery. And Wassenaar arrangement also, so for conventional arms and dual use goods and technologies. So these were 4 missile control technology and dual use export control regimes. So out of these 4 regimes, India is already a member of 3 regimes, but India is not yet a member of nuclear suppliers group. So you can also clearly see in this particular image Wassenaar arrangement on export control for the conventional arms and the dual use goods and technologies. Now when we talk about the NSG, nuclear suppliers group, so this nuclear suppliers group is specifically for addressing or control of nuclear technology, right? So and it held up because of repeated Chinese vetoes and even at the UN Security Council. Since at the UN Security Council, China has been repeatedly vetoing India's membership into the NSG. So because of that reason, India was unable to become part of the nuclear suppliers group. Now when we talk about this Australia group, so Australia group specifically for control of chemical and biological technology, that could be weaponized, right? So chemical and biological weapons are very, very dangerous. So they can have the potential to threaten the entire humanity. So therefore, so this Australia group specifically controls and regulates chemical and biological technology. And after that, we already have this missile technology control regime also. So when we talk about this missile technology control regime for control of rockets and even other aerial vehicles, which are actually capable of delivering weapons of mass destruction. So these were 4 dual use export control regimes, right? Now today also I have one important practice question, and in fact we have discussed about this, right? In the past lectures we have very extensively discussed about that. So recently, a right to be free from the adverse effects of climate change is encompassed within which of the following fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution? So this is very, very simple question, because recently Supreme Court delivered a judgment. So in that particular judgment, Supreme Court has categorically said that the right to be free from the adverse effects of climate change would be included in few fundamental rights. So try to answer this question in the comment section, and I will provide the correct answer in tomorrow's class. And today we'll start a discussion with the generative artificial intelligence. Now when we talk about the artificial intelligence, it is an emerging technology, so there is no doubt about that. It is an emerging technology. Now when we talk about such emerging technology, so it actually poses number of challenges. So it has a number of challenges, especially the legislative challenges or the legal challenges, ethical challenges, governance related challenges. So all these challenges, and apart from that, the technological challenges. So all these challenges have to be addressed whenever we talk about the emerging technologies like generative artificial intelligence, right? Now in this context, how generative artificial intelligence will actually pose new challenges for the legislative, ethical and governance spheres, along with the individual privacy, right? So it also threatens individual privacy, and in fact it poses number of challenges with respect to the regulation of artificial intelligence. So it is essential for us to understand that there is a need to balance innovation with the regulation. So if we focus on innovation neglecting regulation, so that would certainly violate all these things, right? So it could have ethical issues, legal issues, and even the governance issues without regulation. So when we regulate more, so certainly that could impact the innovation that has been taking place in the new emerging technologies such as generative artificial intelligence. And without any delay, let's start this article with the context. So the context is that this generative artificial intelligence is an emerging technology, right? So it has been emerging in nature. So this generative artificial intelligence has been posing a number of challenges for the legal frameworks that are already in place, right? So if you look into the most of the legal frameworks in India, they are not regularly changes with changing times. Rather, these legal frameworks are mostly stagnant and constant in nature. And because of that reason, this generative artificial intelligence has posing new challenges for the legal frameworks and even the judicial precedents also. Okay, so these are the challenges that the artificial intelligence has been posing currently. However, if you look into the present legal infrastructure that we have already in place, this legal infrastructure specifically designed for this pre-artificial intelligence era struggles. Now see, understand that whatever legal infrastructure we currently have in place, that particular legal infrastructure is designed for pre-artificial intelligence era. However, this particular legal infrastructure has been struggling to govern the rapidly growing or rapidly evolving technology, and that has necessitates a comprehensive re-evaluation of the digital jurisprudence. Now, there is a need to re-evaluate the existing digital jurisprudence so that we will be able to deal with the challenges which are posed by this emerging technologies such as generative artificial intelligence, because the existing legal infrastructure in India is belong to the pre-artificial intelligence era. So since the legal infrastructure belong to pre-artificial intelligence era, this emerging technology actually necessitates that there is a need to develop a comprehensive digital jurisprudence which is suitable to the present technologies. And that is the context right now when I talk about this. So the liability fixation for the intermediaries. Now, what are these intermediaries, right? So there are certain intermediaries. For example, Google is considered as an intermediary, and Twitter, right? So now it is known as X. So Facebook. So these are intermediaries. So these are intermediaries because they actually carry the content from one user to another user. Because of that reason, they are known as platforms or intermediaries. And these platforms or intermediaries host content. There is no doubt about that, right? So they host content. For example, imagine that there is a user A and this user posted something on Facebook, so therefore they host content. And these intermediaries, whether they are responsible, whether they can be held accountable for the third party information which is being hosted by these platforms, is a key concern. For example, imagine that a person A posted some hateful message on the Facebook. Person A posted some derogatory remarks against women on Facebook. So since Facebook hosting the content, can Facebook be held accountable for the third party information which is posted in this platform? And that is the key and contentious question here. So however, earlier there was a judgment called Shreya Singhal judgment, right? So in the Shreya Singhal judgment, the Supreme Court has actually upheld section 79. Okay, so section 79 of the IT Act. So this section 79 of the IT Act provides safe harbor. So it provides safe harbor facility to these third parties such as Facebook, Twitter and Google. Now, what exactly is the safe harbor? For example, imagine that there is a platform, and in this particular platform, person A posted some hateful content. So even if a person A posted hateful content, safe harbor makes a certain, it provides certain safe harbor or certain protection to this platform, that the platform simply hosted the information which is posted by the third party. Rather, this platform is not directly responsible for disseminating such hateful content, and that is the safe harbor, right? So in Shreya Singhal judgment, Supreme Court upheld section 79 of the IT Act, and therefore these intermediaries were granted safe harbor protection, right? So they are now have got the safe harbor protection. So if they meet due diligence requirements, so if they meet these due diligence requirements, they will be provided this safe harbor protection. However, there are a number of contrasting views with respect to the generative artificial intelligence tools. Now, when we talk about these intermediaries, so which are being provided safe harbor for hosting the third party information which is otherwise hateful content or derogatory remarks against someone or some section of the society. Now, when we look into the generative artificial intelligence tools, so they are being seen by some intermediaries similar to search engines, right? So few just look at them, the generative artificial intelligence, as a search engines, while others view them as a conduits for the user prompts. So thereby it actually makes it complicated to implement the safe harbor protections to the generative artificial intelligence. It is very difficult to extend the generative artificial intelligence protection to the the safe harbor protection to the generative artificial intelligence. Similarly, there are legal conflicts also. Now, when I say legal conflicts, so these legal conflicts are very often involving this generative artificial intelligence outputs. Such as, example, in 2023, there was a lawsuit against the Open Artificial Intelligence. And this lawsuit against open artificial intelligence has highlighted the challenges that were existing in classifying the generative artificial intelligence tools and assigning them the liability for violating the privacy of individuals, violating the individual rights of people, particularly when user reposts are involved. So there are a number of issues, number of challenges also, and apart from that, the copyright conundrum is also another challenge with respect to the generative artificial intelligence. Right now, when we talk about this copyright conundrum, section 16 of the Indian Patent Act of 1957, so this act 1957, so it does not accommodate artificial intelligence generated works, right? So whatever works which are being generated by the artificial intelligence through using the technology and innovation which is being installed into such devices or such artificial intelligence systems, the whatever works that they have created, they will not be covered under, or section 16 of the Indian Copyright Act will not accommodate artificial intelligence generated works. So therefore it has raised a lot of concerns about the need for revisions to include the artificial intelligence authored content as well. So thereby it would protect innovation, right? So it would protect innovation, and at the same time the violations of copyrights can be easily detected, and thereby protecting innovation in letter and spirit. So that is the objective here. And similarly, when we talk about the artificial intelligence, there was 161st Committee of Parliament, right? So this is Parliamentary Standing Committee. So this Parliamentary Standing Committee 161 report has been indicating that the current Copyright Act, whatever Copyright Act that we have, is actually ill-equipped to address the authorship and at the same time the ownership by the artificial intelligence. So since it is ill-equipped, there is a need to reform and reassess, re-evaluate such Copyright Acts with changing technologies. Right? So we cannot neglect those minor things. With changing technologies, we should also be able to change and evaluate such laws. And when we do not have adequate protections in place, and when we did not include the artificial intelligence generated works into the Copyright Act, so or if it is ill-equipped to address the authorship and ownership, so that will lead to uncertainty in liability for copyright infringement, right? So it will lead to the liability, or there is an uncertainty about the liability for this copyright infringement. And even there are a lot of enforcement challenges also. When we talk about these enforcement challenges, ChatGPT terms of use shift liability to the user. Okay, so liability will not be taken up by these third parties, because if third parties as per the recent IT guidelines, government issued these IT guidelines, right? So they have issued these IT guidelines recently, and according to this IT guidelines, there will be a fact check unit. So this fact check unit will be established, and there is a fact check unit also. Press Information Bureau, PIB, will be considered as a fact check unit. And in case if a fact check unit receives complaints regarding this misinformation or fake news or any intermediary which hosts the hateful and derogatory remarks on their platforms, then fact check unit will verify that particular information. And if PIB found that that information is malicious information and fake information, then PIB orders, or the government orders the concerned platform to immediately remove the information from the platform. And if it did not remove the information based on the orders of the government, then it would lose the safe harbor provision, right? So it would lose the safe harbor. So once it loses the safe harbor under section 79 of the Information Technology Act, then then this platform would also be liable because of hosting this hateful and derogatory content or any other content which is misinformation, fake news, everything. However, so when we talk about the generative artificial intelligence, so it is very important for us to understand how it would impact the privacy of individuals. So there was a judgment called K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, right? So this judgment was known as K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. Now in this Puttaswamy judgment, the Supreme Court has recognized privacy as a fundamental right. So I hope all of you knew about that. Privacy was recognized as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So since privacy was recognized as a fundamental right by the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment by the Supreme Court, so there were that has been leading to the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, Digital Personal Data Protection Act, because so this artificial intelligence and digital personal data very often violates the privacy of individuals. So in order to protect the privacy of individuals, this Digital Personal Data Protection Bill was passed, Act was passed in the year 2023, and which introduces this Digital Personal Data Protection Act, introduce rights to ensure and the right to be forgotten. Okay, so right to erase the information, right to erase the information from these devices, and right to be forgotten, so that individuals right to privacy or any other rights would not be violated if we integrate those two rights as per the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. However, there are a number of challenges with the generative artificial intelligence models. Now, when we talk about the challenges which are being posed by the generative artificial intelligence models, so first and foremost, their inability to unlearn absorbed data. For example, imagine that there is an artificial intelligence device B, and we feed all the information to artificial intelligence device B. So once we feed all the information to this particular device B, it is very difficult to unlearn whatever content which was already absorbed by the artificial intelligence based device B. So therefore it actually poses significant challenges in exercising control over the personal information, because once we have already feeded all the information, it would be very difficult to unlearn the absorbed data, and that is already having a lot of data, and thus it could pose serious challenges, or it could also have control over the personal information despite having this Digital Personal Data Protection Act provisions. However, we should not forget the implications on the personal data also, because integration of personal information into artificial intelligence models actually raises critical questions about safeguarding individual rights while leveraging the powerful artificial intelligence technologies. Now, what steps to pursue, or what should be the way forward in the present context, keeping in mind the various challenges which are being posed by the generative artificial intelligence? Now, what we can do, we have to grant temporary immunity from the liability to this generative artificial intelligence platforms, right? So if we provide temporary immunity from holding them liable for this generative artificial intelligence platforms through a sandbox approach, would actually allows a responsible development and data gathering to inform future regulations, right? So it is essentially aimed at developing artificial intelligence technologies. And apart from that, data rights and responsibilities should also be targeted, or should also be focused on, right? So when we are overhauling the data acquisition process, whatever the process through which we have been acquiring the data, so when we are planned to acquire or overhaul the data acquisition process of the generative artificial intelligence, so it is very important to ensure proper licensing and compensation, potentially through the revenue sharing and licensing agreements, right? So this would be the another step. And after that, there are also certain licensing challenges as well. Now when we talk about these licensing challenges, so creating centralized platforms for licensing data akin to stock photo websites to streamline access and even ensure data integrity against historical biases and discrimination. So all these things have to be kept in mind whenever we are planning to regulate the generative artificial intelligence, right? So it is very important that we must balance regulation with the innovation, right? So balancing regulation with innovation, so that is very important aspect. So I hope you have understood this. For example, if we focus excessively on regulation, so that would compromise, or that would lead to compromise of innovation. And if we focus innovation and neglect regulation, so that would create a lot of ethical, legal and governance related challenges as well. Now since it is an emerging technology with unlimited potential, especially the artificial intelligence in various sectors, it is very important that we must promote innovation in this area, right? So we must promote innovation in this area. And apart from that, this existing legal infrastructure must be streamlined to suit the changing dynamics and changing needs because of the artificial intelligence. So those things have to be kept in mind. So next important article is with respect to the zero hunger, right? So what is the progress that we have made with respect to eradicating hunger? So hunger is a very serious problem across the world, but most importantly countries in the global south, especially in South Asia and Africa and South America. Now if you look into the sustainable development goals, SDGs, in the sustainable development goals 2030, zero hunger is part of SDG 2. Zero hunger is part of sustainable development goal number 2, right? So therefore, what is the context of this particular article, and we will understand how the progress has been made with respect to zero hunger, and what is the scenario in India with respect to eradicating hunger as a problem. Because now if you look across the world, food insecurity or food security problems are one of the major reason for the hunger across the world. So even if there is adequate food available, hidden hunger is another major problem, right? So hidden hunger is another major problem that the world has been facing. So in this context, there was a recent report, and this recent report was published by International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems. So this is also known as International Panel of Experts and Sustainable Food Systems. So this particular report has highlighted that there has been a significantly increasing trends of global hunger. So the global hunger has been increasing at a rapid pace, primarily because of the issues in the food security. Now, apart from issues in the food security, if we can analyze the problem, global population has been rapidly increasing, and food wastage is another problem. And apart from food wastage, when we talk about the hunger across the world, there is equity issues in availability of food between developed and developing countries. And inflation is another major problem, because with inflation what happens, poor generally don't afford food grains, the quality food grains, and after that the affordability issues and availability of food grains, right? So availability and affordability of food grains is another challenge. And even declining agricultural production due to climate change is also another major challenge, which has been resulted in significantly increasing levels of hunger, right? So this has been primarily increased by all these challenges that we have discussed, and majorly climate impacts on the agriculture. And this report published by International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, so also coincides with the United Nations review of progress towards the Sustainable Development Goal number 2. Remember that Sustainable Goal number 2 talks about the zero hunger, right? So therefore it has been indicating that the world has been going through number of issues, and due to these number of issues, it has been there has been a significant increase in the number of people with hunger. So what are the key findings of this particular report, right? So this report has published some data with respect to hunger across the world. So nearly 30% of the world's population has been facing food insecurity. So 30% is not a small number, right? So 30% around 240 crore people, right? So because currently global population is around it is around 8 billion. Global population is around 8 billion population, right? So 800 crore population. So because of 8 billion people, and out of 8 billion people, 30% have been facing the food insecurity, and even 42% of 8 billion people, 8 billion global population, they were unable to afford a healthy diet also. And in fact, projections have been suggesting that around 600 million people could be hungry by around 2030, and 600 million is also not a small number, right? So around 60 crore people could be hungry by 2030, moving net zero hunger goal further far away, right? So the target is that net zero target, which is placed in SDG goal number 2, that is essentially means that by 2030 we completely eradicate hunger. So hunger would be zero by 2030. But even if we reach 2030, the number of people who face who still be facing the problem of hunger would be around 600 million people across the world. So therefore we will not be able to eradicate hunger, because there will be 600 people more who will face the problem of hunger. And in fact, so global crisis also impacts this. Now what kind of a global crisis? Back to back we have been facing the COVID-19 pandemic, and apart from COVID-19 pandemic, this Russia-Ukraine war, and after Russia-Ukraine war we should also talk about this Hamas and Israel conflict. A back-to-back series of conflicts have led to the food security challenges across the world, right? So these global issues have also creating new problems for the food security, thereby further enhancing or increasing the due date to achieve this zero hunger target. Now apart from that, there is also a need to understand the localized food supply chains and their role. So the local food systems termed as territorial markets. So local food systems are known as territorial markets, and they have demonstrated resilience and even equity in the face of the shocks that these food systems have been facing. And these systems actually include public markets, street vendors, cooperatives, urban agriculture. So all these things comes under the territorial markets, and they actually demonstrated a lot of resilience and even equity also. So therefore they have a lot of potential to address the problem of hunger. So they can address the problem of hunger. So if adequate attention is paid by the government on these things, the government have to provide certain incentives for these territorial markets. So once we are able to provide certain concessions to these territorial markets, the problem of hunger can be easily addressed. So however, we need to understand the benefits of the localized systems or territorial markets. So just now we have understood that these localized systems are resilient. Okay, so when I say resilient, so they can be able to withstand shocks, and they can be able to address hunger problem that the people have been facing. So they can also address the problem of equity as well. Now, in this context, there is a need to access diverse and nutritious food by the people. So if people don't access diverse and nutritious food, it will lead to the problem of hidden hunger, right? So even though people have been consuming food, adequate food, a food lacks nutrients, both micro and macronutrients, and that leads to the problem of hidden hunger, and that also comes with various other diseases. However, we have understood that these localized market systems have high resilience to the global shocks. Now, what sort of a global shocks? COVID-19 is a global shock. Russia-Ukraine war is a global shock. And even Hamas-Israel conflict is also a global shock. So, in the face of all these global shocks, so these localized territorial markets have a lot of potential to withstand these shocks, and they can address the problem of hunger at an efficient manner, And after that, we need to talk about the affordable prices and even the environmental sustainability benefits of it also, right? Whenever we talk about this, these localized systems provide food grains at affordable prices, and they also ensure environmental sustainability of such products. And in fact, they support the livelihoods for the local people, especially women, right? So it makes women economically independent, self-reliant, and it will also lead to the women empowerment in the area of economy, right? So it support the livelihoods of these small scale producers and even preservation of the local food cultures, and that is very important. However, there are a number of challenges that these local markets have been facing, and what sort of challenges the local markets have been facing. Now, when we talk about the challenges, they were very often penalized by the trade policies which are being followed by the governments. And government have certain investment priorities, and even the private sector also has certain investment priorities, and these investment priorities are very often neglecting these local markets. So since the investment priorities are neglecting the local markets, so they lack sufficient infrastructure to reach out to the greater population. Since they are resilient in nature, they ensure equity, and they can also address the problem of hunger. It is very important that these localized systems or territorial markets should have adequate infrastructure so that they can reach out to number of people. So that could effectively address the problem of hunger, right? So therefore, it penalized by trade policies, investment priorities, and even the agricultural subsidies, which are favoring the corporate interests. And apart from that, there is also a lack of infrastructure such as sanitation and storage facilities, so which actually poses challenges to the scalability, right? So it also poses challenges to the scalability. Now, what is zero hunger? That we need to understand here, right? So it is very important that we need to understand what exactly is the zero hunger. Hunger is the lack of adequate or poor availability of adequate quality food. So that is hunger, right? So a very simple definition: lack of adequate quality food is hunger. Now, when we talk about the zero hunger, we wanted to completely eradicate hunger in any form, right? So there should be no hunger, and we ensure food security for every individual on this planet in general, and every individual in India in specific, right? So when we say that we ensured food security for almost all people, so that essentially means that we have achieved the goal of zero hunger. So by sustainable development goal number 2, by 2030, we must ensure food security for most of the people or almost all people. So as I've already told you, that sustainable development goal number 2 actually aims to achieve zero hunger, right? So its focus or its objective is to achieve zero hunger. So by 2030, there should be no communities or no people who still face the problem of hunger. So in order to do that, first and foremost, we need to ensure food security of every individual, and we should also improve nutrition, not just food, but also we should provide food with adequate nutrition, and we should also promote sustainable agriculture also. So all these things are very important, because without promoting sustainable agriculture, so we cannot address the challenges posed by the climate change. And sustainable agriculture is very often resilient to the climate change, and negative impacts of climate change. And sustainable agriculture plays a very important role in adaptation and mitigation within the agriculture sector, so thereby ensuring the productivity, protecting the livelihoods of the farmers, and also ensuring the stable supply of food grains. And the stable supply of food grains would essentially ensures food security. And when we say that we have ensured food security for our populations, that essentially translates to zero hunger, right? So that essentially means zero hunger. So to measure the success of achieving this, that we have achieved zero hunger, we have provided food security for almost all people on this planet, or all people, all citizens of this country. So United Nations has outlined 5 targets to indicate our progress towards achieving the goal of zero hunger, right? So what are the targets that the UN has provided so that we can measure the progress made on this front? So we need to talk about access to safe, nutritious and sufficient food round the year. So that is the first thing. And end of malnutrition in all its forms. Now in India, malnutrition is a problem. So through the public distribution system, we have been distributing food grains. Now even though we have been distributing food grains, so the food grain very often lacking the necessary micro and macronutrients. So because of that reason, it has been creating the problem of malnutrition, and malnutrition has led to the stunting and wasting among the children, right? So especially under 5 children, and it also impacting the learning outcomes. And very often these children have been facing number of other issues because of poor immunity. And it is also important that we must improve or increase agricultural productivity through sustainable agricultural practices, and there should be sustainable food systems and agricultural resilience. When I say agricultural resilience, agriculture sector would be able to withstand the negative effects of climate change, and we must produce a diverse crops and seeds so that we can address the growing food security needs of a diverse sections of Indian society or the global population. Now we should also understand the situation in India. What exactly is the situation in India? So as per 2023 Global Hunger Index data, right, when we talk about the 2023 Global Hunger Index data, so India is ranked, below, right? So it is one of poor rankings for India. So India is ranked 111 out of 125 countries. And in fact, India also falls in serious category of hunger. So this has been indicating that there are number of people who are still poor, who are still facing the problem of hunger. And despite being India providing food grains through the public distribution system to every eligible beneficiary through National Food Security Act, still there are a sizable number of people who have been facing the problem of hunger and malnutrition. So that has to be addressed immediately. And in fact, so this Global Hunger Index has also highlighted that India has the largest number of zero food children, so at 6.7 million, right? So or you can also say that 67 lakh children have been facing the problem of hunger, right? So in fact, if you look into the total global population, especially the children who have been facing the problem of hunger, half of the children are still in India, right? So half of the children are from India alone. So therefore you can understand the seriousness of the problem of hunger in India, especially among children. Now it is very important that we not just provide them food, but it is also important that food must have essential micro and macro nutrients. So according to the Food and Agricultural Organization, so this Food and Agricultural Organization also publishes the state of food security and nutrition in the world 2022. So this report is published by Food and Agricultural Organization of United Nations, and this report has highlighted that 224 million people, or 16% of India's population, are undernourished. So they have been facing the problem of malnutrition. with 53 percentage out of these 16 percentage are at the reproductive age woman. They are also being anemic, so they are also facing the problem of anemia, right? So anemia is one of the most serious issue that the Indian women have been facing, right? So almost more than half of the Indian women have been facing the problem of anemia, right? So therefore this has to be addressed through nutritious food or better interventions from the government side. However, according to the State of Food Security Act, or not Act, State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2021 report, so around 9.8% of India's population is still undernourished, right? So there are number of challenges that we must to deal with to achieve the goal of zero hunger by the year 2030. So all these challenges must be addressed in letter and spirit. However, what are the causes that India is still facing malnutrition, hunger, malnourishment? Number of women are facing the problem of anemia. Now what are the basic causes? So the causes have, there are manifold causes for this. Okay, so primarily the compounding impacts of social and economic inequalities. These social and economic inequalities are actually slowed or reversed the previous progress in reducing hunger in many countries, right? So these issues essentially played a role in impacting the progress which was made in the area of hunger. Now apart from that, there are a number of causes also. Climate change, which has been reducing agricultural production, right? So it has been reducing agricultural production, and at the same time it has also been impacting the livelihoods of the farmers, also making the agriculture land less suitable for the cultivation of different crops, and increasing the pests and sea level rises and flooding of seawater, and increasing salinity, and even conflicts also further enhance and increasing this problem, and economic shocks, particularly unemployment and poverty. Food wastage is one of the highest, right? So food wastage must be addressed, and even global pandemic and Russia-Ukraine war, all these factors are major causes of increasing hunger, malnutrition, and lack of food security among the people. However, so we all knew that India has already taken number of initiatives to address this problem of hunger and malnutrition. Now, what are the measures what are the key initiatives that India has taken in this regard, right? So, for example, National Food Security Act. So that was passed by the Union government in the year 2013, right? So it would cover around 80 crore people with subsidized food grains, and government also announced the midday meal scheme. It provides nutritious food for every school going child, and Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, that looks into the healthcare of both child and mother, and the National Nutrition Mission or Poshan Abhiyan. So all these things are very important initiatives that were taken by India to address the issue of food insecurity, or ensure food security and supply nutritious and adequate quality food to poor sections of the society, to eradicate hunger and malnutrition in India. Okay, so that's all about this. And there are certain recommendations also. Okay, so there are certain recommendations for the policy action as well. Now, what are those recommendations? They support sustainable small scale producers through the government purchasing policies, right? They actually support the sustainable small scale. We need to support these small scale producers, and we should also shift subsidies to invest in infrastructure, especially the territorial markets. So when we invest in infrastructure of these territorial markets, so they essentially play a very important role in increasing their reach and increasing the capacity also. We need to protect these local markets, safeguard local food systems from corporate dominance through the policy interventions also. So after that, we need to promote sustainable practices as well, right? So in this context, we need to encourage biodiverse farming, diverse diets to ensure food security and even the environmental sustainability also. So next important article is with respect to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting that is going to be held in Kazakhstan, Astana, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will not participate in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Instead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Kazakhstan, right? Kazakhstan Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will take part in this. Okay, so now we'll understand about this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a Eurasian political, economic and international security and defense organization. So that was established by China and Russia in the year 2001, right? So in the year 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established. And apart from that, when we talk about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it is world's largest regional organization. So in terms of number of countries it covers, or the geographical scope and its extent, so because it has been covering a population of approximately 80% in the Eurasian region and 40% of the global population, and because of that reason it is one of the largest organization, or world's largest organization. So as of 2021, its combined GDP was around 20% of the global GDP. So the total and combined GDP of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is 20% of the global GDP, right? So when we look into the successor to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so Shanghai Cooperation Organization is actually successor to the Shanghai 5. Now this Shanghai 5 was founded in 1996. Shanghai 5 was founded in 1996 with 5 countries in the Central Asian region, essentially China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia and Tajikistan. From Shanghai 5 in 2001, this Shanghai Cooperation Organization was founded. Now when we talk about this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it is governed by heads of state council, and it is in fact a supreme decision making body which meets once a year. However, there are certain main goals for this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So the main goals of SCO including mutual confidence, good neighborly relations, promoting good neighborly relations among all these Shanghai Cooperation Organization member countries, and even promoting effective cooperation in politics, trade and economy, science, technology, culture as well as education. In all these areas, promoting friendly and active cooperation, energy, transportation, tourism, environment protection and other fields. So these are the areas where the Shanghai Cooperation Organization member countries usually work, right? So they strengthen relations and also promote the neighborly relations between them, right? So leaders of other countries in this Eurasian group, or recently Belarus would also become part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization this year. And in fact, this Shanghai Cooperation Organization Council will adopt the Astana Declaration. Okay, so once they meet in this Kazakhstan, so they will pass this Astana Declaration, which is expected to focus on strengthening ties between the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries, especially on the economic issues, connectivity, fighting terrorism and even the regional development also, right? So in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting, the Ministry of External Affairs has held that or promoted maximizing the utilization of Chabahar port. We all knew that this Chabahar port is developed by India. It has been developed by India so it would provide connectivity to the Central Asia, and in the Central Asia most of the countries are Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries. So therefore India has been preparing plans to further improve connectivity among all these Central Asian countries through this Chabahar port, and apart from that there is also international north-south transport corridor, right? So this international north-south transport corridor also connects Eurasia with India, right? So this also connects Eurasia with India. So therefore in this context, so it specifically connects India to Central Asia and further Russia via Iran, and therefore there is also India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor as well. So that has been stalled due to this Israel-Gaza conflict, right? So there were number of these infrastructure projects which involve India as a major player that would significantly enhances India's connectivity with rest of the world. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.